Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and co-worker of Coach Mike Brown. What's going on, Sean Cunningham?
Yeah, there are people who think that Mike Brown's coming for my job. I'm not one of them. We've had this planned for a long, long time, and can't wait to usher him in, have him fill an anchor, maybe do weather. I think that would be really impressive. But yeah, we just decided to debut him as our newest reporter today.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a sec. And of course, we've got Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
Good. I've learned that I need to start carrying a mic at these pressers, and Mike Brown cannot do the weather report because if there's an opening, I am insisting that Sean needs to do it. Sean gives the best weather updates.
As someone who hates rain.
He does. He does hate the rain. That is true.
I'd be up there going, "Oh, look, guys, what a downer! Stay inside. Stay inside. Don't drive in this, quarter of an inch chance of rain we might get." Christina Werner's going to kill me. She listens to this and gives me a hard time anytime I badmouth rain. I know we need it. I just don't like it.
That's amazing.
But I hope we get it every time I'm sleeping.
Yeah, as long as you just wake up to it, you're fine, Sean. Is that the deal?
Yeah, if I wake up, if it's raining when I wake up, I'm instantly just bad mood, tired, don't want to get out of bed ever, no energy, just lethargic, want to stay inside and just curl up under blankets. That's how it is all the time if it rains. I just don't like it.
That cracks me
That's
up.
just me, though. No one need, I know we need it.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Sorry.
Yeah, we've been at practice and in games, and we've got lots to talk about today. We're gonna hit the ground running here in just a sec, but before that, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and subscribe down below. If you are interested in being a sponsor of the podcast, there is a form at the bottom of the description on the YouTube channel. You can jump on there, and outside of that. We've got a happy hour coming up. We've got a happy hour scheduled for Thursday, October 20th from 5:30 to 7:30. I haven't come up with a name, so off the record with a Kings Beat virtual happy hour. You know what? I'm not going to reveal the name yet because although
You haven't thought of one.
Yeah.
yeah, well, no, I'm not going to reveal who it is that's coming in and going to be our guest, but it's a good one. And we just want to make sure that that we're able, we've got a firm commitment. Brenden and Sean and I were, hanging out, waiting. Well, it was after media the other day, and we got a firm. Someone put us in their calendar, but we're just going to have to wait a little bit because I don't like springing this out there until I know for sure. So it looks like October 20th. We're going to have, it's the night after opening night. So it should be fun.
I'd say that guest is more locked in than I am with the way my schedule is. So I would feel great about that person being there.
Yeah, I think so too. So it's funny. They actually checked their calendar, made sure it was okay. But before I announce it, we'll get one more thumbs up that it's happening. And it's exciting that we're gonna get back to the happy hour game because the happy hour game is fun. Also, thanks to everybody who's signing up and becoming premium subscribers of the Kings Beat. Lots of premium subscribers over the last 2 weeks. Awesome stuff, and we'll keep rolling content. Okay, let's get to the moment that we teased earlier, which was just a fun moment at practice today. Where Sean wins all of his boss's hearts by having Mike Brown become an employee of Fox 40.
Hey, Jay, come here for a sec, Jay. I got a question for you, Jay. Come on, come right here, stand next to me. This is a dual interview right here. First of all, you guys know Jay was a hell of a player. He played in the Olympics. He coached in the Olympics. How many points you average in college?
26.
26.
Got buckets.
Hey, got bucket. How many assists?
Not many.
Okay.
Not many.
Not many.
Accidents.
They want to know about the bell. Can you tell them about the bell?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. Can I ask?
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Mike Brown with Fox 40 News.
Yeah.
You guys installed a bell in the practice facility, that bronze, gold bell. Can you tell us? Go ahead, ring it, Luke. Okay. Can you tell us what's behind the gold bell?
Yeah, multiple things. We want to reward players and bring recognition to guys that do good things for the team. Guy takes a charge in practice or he does verticality at the rim, we're going to ring the bell. And then team-wise, if we get in the paint and we kick it out and make a three, and we trunk the defense, then that's going to be something that we reward people for as well. And I know there's a history with Sacramento and bells, so we've got trying to bring the bell back to Sacramento.
You heard it live. Sacramento Kings practice facility. Mike Brown, Fox 40 News. Back to you, Julie.
All right, Julie, what do you got for us?
Natural, isn't he? It's a natural.
He's a natural.
First of all, can I just mention how loud that bell is? We're on the other end of the building, and you can still hear it as if it was right behind us.
I had no idea that it was that loud on my audio until right then, just because I cut it and put it up as quickly as possible. I had no idea, and that thing is a good 75 feet away, 80 feet away. I don't know how that was so loud. Anyway.
Especially when HB told us the first time that he rang it, it broke. And it sounds like it's worked pretty well right now. So, but I looked up Jay Triano's college stats real quick, by the way, just out of curiosity.
You fact check him?
No, I'm not fact checking the number at all.
Okay.
I was just curious about some of this. First of all, he's got a whole head of hair, a lot of hair going on back then, Jay. But he has 11 school records at Simon Fraser University, and most points in a single season, points in a single game with 45, and point per game average 22.9. Jersey retired, led Canada in scoring 1 year in the Olympics until they got bronze and lost to the U.S. Jay was a baller.
Have you ever been to one of those bars where you tip and all of a sudden they ring the bell?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what I thought was going on. Like, obviously it's not a bar, but if I don't know, I didn't know that it was going to be rewarding the little things. And I think that's a good thing that they're doing, but figured that it was more of an incentive based ring of the bell.
I wonder who has to ring the bell. Like, is there someone who stands by the bell the whole time? Because the bell is a good 15 feet off the court.
If it were me and if I was tasked with that responsibility, I'd put that on my business card. It would be on my email signature. It's part of my title.
Official bell ringer? Bell
Yep.
ringer? Okay. And then would you double at Christmas as a Salvation Army Santa? Like the
No,
bell
because
ringer?
I'd want to get paid. So
Those guys get paid. Those guys get
do
paid.
they? Oh, well,
Huh?
shoot.
There you go. A little a little winter cash for you, Sean, right there.
There we
There's your
go.
job. Yeah, Brenden, what do you make of this? The strange incentive, as a basketball player, it's intriguing. It's about culture with this team. We're seeing it time and time again. Even Malik Monk talked about it today that, it's such a, the culture of the team is building. Everything is fun. Everyone's having a good time. And Monk even said very specifically, it's Coach Mike, that's bringing the fun.
I think togetherness, was a word that he used. And that's what we're kind of seeing. I think that the bell is another way that Mike Brown can focus on the details and reward that. It's something he's talked about a lot. And I think just emphasizing that even more so for Jay to say that it's when they're drawing charges or good verticality on defense, protecting the rim, or just good ball movement on offense. I think it's just a way to even further appreciate and highlight all these details that Mike Brown and the entire coaching staff is so keyed in on. And I think part of the reason that Sacramento was able to succeed in the way they did in just that preseason game. So take that for what you will. But I thought they did a lot of the little things well and showed that even without a great defensive roster, that maybe they can be okay there.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out too, guys, is we're talking to a lot of these guys. Granted, it's on the record. and they're coming over and they're a little tongue-in-cheek talking about how long practices are. I think it was Harrison who says sometimes it feels like 2 months, and a lot of tongue-in-cheek, little verbal, not jabs, but just little, oh my gosh, like little barbs that they're referencing in this camp under Mike Brown, and how much teaching is an emphasis and how mundane some of that can get. But there's beauty in that work. And it prompted me to reach out to a few people, even just, privately. And even the feedback privately you get is like, it's a necessary evil, is what one player put it to me, about how, the attention to detail, the structure of this camp. It's everything we were talking about before Mike Brown became head coach, and it was going to be one of those shock to the systems, and you can see it certainly. And I think the bell singing happy birthday, he's really going to try to emphasize fun and lightheartedness, especially at the end when the grind of everything has just, kind of beaten some of these guys down. And I think there are guys that weren't ready for this camp, to be completely brutally honest. I think the conditioning overall was really good, but I think there's a lot of guys from just the mental grind of things weren't quite ready. But that being said, I think they're in a much, much better spot now than they were 2 weeks ago when things opened up. And I think the characteristics of Mike Brown's camp is coming out, but certainly the personality is as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody around the team, like whether it's the players or it's us who are covering it, like you're almost pulling for him just because he's such a good personality, and he would be a lot of fun to cover for the next 8 years, 10 years, if it works out that way. So you're kind of hoping that the play on the court equals what we're seeing off the court. And so far in preseason, we are seeing like the team's been really good, but it's preseason. Like we shouldn't put any stock into that, and we'll get to Tuesday overreactions here in a minute. But like for me, it's like you're sitting there like, man, what if they can be good, and what if this is the personality that we get to cover for a couple of years? That would be a lot of fun, as opposed to some of the personalities that have come through before or just haven't been able, you forget about the personality pretty quick when the Kings 20 games under 500, and it doesn't matter. So you're kind of hoping at this point that somehow that he finds success, because I think it'll be a lot of fun to cover him from start to finish if that's the case.
And it's going to be a theme until it eventually happens, but we've said it a handful of times. Mike Brown has said it. We're going to have to see how they respond to adversity, because it's easier for everything to be good right now, right? But about how they bounce back when there is a stinker of a game, and the competitive spirit that Mike Brown keeps talking about just maybe isn't there. And it's just going to be about how they bounce back from that.
Yeah, Sean, I want to ask you, how do you think he handles that? Because he's handled all of the positivity so well, but like not being around Mike Brown all that much, how do you think he handles negativity?
I'm actually more curious about that, not so much around Mike Brown, but the personality of this team. How does this team handle adversity, negativity? What's a 4-game losing skid look like? What's the energy in the gym? What's the energy around the team? Is there any? I think the position battles have been healthy for this team, and I think it's. We all know it's a long season and anything can change. Guys that might be out of a rotation in November could find themselves in the rotation or even starting in March. So it's. I'm more concerned about. I think Mike Brown, his approach to his team is going to remain very consistent from the day camp opens to the day of the final exit interviews of the season. I think that's all going to remain the same. I do feel he's going to be a workhorse for this team. I think he's going to really ride this team a lot. And I don't know so much about the success of this team this year compared to the success next year. I think next year is what they're really trying to build for. Certainly, I'm not trying to throw away this season and the success that could lie ahead for this team, but it is it's that process. It's process-driven work. The results, you want to get enough sample size of guys playing with each other. The first year of a head coach sometimes has stumbling blocks oftentimes, and I feel like this is going to be a team that will be able to find success based on the talent on the floor. Who knows what that looks like yet? But I keep putting myself in the fans in the shoes of the fans from the other night at Golden One Center. I mean, these guys show up, and you're looking at this team. And granted, you saw a glimpse of it when Domas got here, but the team around Domas and Fox wasn't really there yet. You had disrupted your entire depth and team to get somebody like Sabonis, and now that you've built around them with some quality depth, you're looking on the floor and you're seeing the ball just zip around the gym. You're seeing defense and spacing, and these are things, albeit preseason, these are things that are just leaping off the page. And granted, Portland was, they'd kind of mailed it in and they were a little bit done at one point. But even though the Kings had upwards of 20 turnovers in that game, you're encouraged because the ball is just zipping everywhere. And even in moments where they do slow it down and go one-on-one, you're still having 2 or 3 touches before that. So I think fans are really going to be encouraged with this team so far, and it's going to be hard not to walk away from a singular game if you go see them in person and not think, oh my gosh, this is night and day better.
Yeah, I think it is going to be that way. I mean, we'll just get to Tuesday overreactions. Because I think it plays into this grander scheme here that we're talking about. The Kings win, and they beat Portland. 34 assists, 21 made three-pointers. And, Sean, you talked about it there. Like, even if the ball does get sticky a little bit, we haven't seen stickiness at all. Like, the ball is popping. It's all over the place. It's moving from one side of the court to the next. And, I have a clip here from Kevin Huerter, and I think this captures a lot of it too. I'm going to play the clip really quick. I didn't expect to play it right now, but I think it does actually fit into this conversation. Kevin, just the way the ball was moving and all of the free-flowing offense and all the three-point attempts, how much are you looking forward to that because you are a great three-point shooter, and when you guys hit 21 tonight, but you also had like 45 attempts. But just how good is that for a guy like yourself?
Yeah, it's really exciting. That's a big reason why I was so excited to come here. And the vision that Coach Brown laid out, when they made the trade, and our first conversation was he was talking about how he envisioned our offense going, the personnel that he was trying to bring in, and so far it's been great. You guys have only seen what we've done on the court on game days, but practice-wise, it's been all 4 groups been moving the ball. It's been a lot of unselfishness. We don't have a lot of plays. We're really just kind of out there playing with each other and learning how to play with each other, and hopefully that's something that we continue to build. And if we're passing the ball like this and getting to in the preseason, I'm excited what's obviously to come as we get further in the season.
Is the chemistry already building? You already feel that?
It is. I mean, it is. It's the ball is power. The ball is power. The ball is energy. You move the ball. You move energy around. Guys are gonna like playing with each other. That helps build chemistry pretty fast. So if you're a team that's dominating the ball by 1 or 2 guys, you don't build chemistry very fast. So if all 5 guys are touching the ball, everyone's engaged, and it's an offense, and it's a feeling everybody wants to be a part of.
Yeah, Sean, take it away.
I was distracted by somebody's squeaky slides coming.
Yeah,
out of
what
the
was
shower. That was somebody walking by with wet feet. Yeah, man, he's right, and I think it's one of the reasons why look, you get traded, and that can be a little bit of a shock, and you might have some strong feelings about it. But I think Kevin Huerter recognized, coming to Sacramento, playing with someone like Sabonis, playing in a Mike Brown system, playing with a talented point guard. Not that Trae Young wasn't, but Trae Young might be a little bit more ball dominant, and certainly with the talent that surrounds him here in Sacramento, I'm not saying it's better, but it's definitely going to provide more touches for him. And we've chronicled that here on the podcast about how many shots more we feel that Huerter will have here in Sacramento than he had in Atlanta. And maybe playing a little bit more of an important piece to this team than what he did with the Hawks. But he's absolutely right. And to me, it's like, you kind of want to see it first. And I'm, you're starting to see the characteristic of the team and the makeup of this team. And it's definitely one that looks to be an unselfish team. And, I've talked about it, and I think it starts with Sabonis because sometimes he can be too unselfish to a fault. I want him to be a little bit more selfish. Because I want to see him get to 20 this year. I want to see that points per game rise for him, and in doing so, I just feel like a lot of his personality with Mike Brown doubling down on that, and you just see it. It's in the makeup of this team, and they're going to try to find shooters, and even if this team struggles to shoot, that's where I want to see if they can sustain the ball movement, or does someone try to play hero ball at that point. I think Sabonis is a big enough presence on this squad to where if that happens, he's going to point it out before even Mike Brown does.
I hadn't seen that clip of Huerter yet, the end of it, and it is pretty funny how it kind of feels like he's subtweeting the Hawks offense a little bit at the end there. Just the specific pointing out of compared to when one or two guys are dominating the ball, I think is just very much sounds like him talking about the difference between his old situation and his new one, and totally understand the idea of the ball having energy. I think just when you get to touch it on a possession and the ball is swinging around, like, it just keeps you more engaged. And the whole idea of like the importance of cutting hard, even when you don't have the ball, knowing that some of these times, if I cut hard enough and am open, I will get rewarded. It's not just all for the sake of helping other people. That I think that aspect of trust is something that I don't know that we saw very amazingly last year. And that seems to be a key going into this year as well. That feels like it's there again. We'll have to see what happens when adversity strikes. And because I think it's important to note that, they played a great game. First of all, I thought Portland looked really bad, and I don't think that they're just a horrible team, but it's definitely nice considering Sacramento is probably going to be competing pretty closely with Portland in my mind for that play-in spot. But 21 threes is something they only did one time throughout the regular season last year. They had one game of making 22. Outside of that, they never topped 17. Now, the Kings are a better shooting team. Obviously, Huerter, Monk, Murray, like, we know that they're a better shooting team, but night before against Portland was still an outlier. And then when it comes to assists, they had that 34. That would have been a season high last year. Like, I just think it's worth noting that was an outlier night. I think that it'll be more common than what we saw last year, but the extent of all the shots going down and how bad Portland's perimeter defense was definitely helped them look better.
Yeah, I pointed this out during the game, and I think in my post-game notes that like 8 different Kings hit a three-pointer, which to me was spectacular. And there's a bunch of guys that took shots. I mean, that number could have been higher for sure. But it's not. Here's something I missed. They had 34 assists. 16 players played. The only player who did not have an assist was who Brenden has tattooed on his hip, Keon Ellis.
Lower back, please.
Lower back.
Front shin.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that 15 out of 16 players had an assist, and Keon Ellis clearly, I'm not blaming Keon Ellis for not having an assist, but that speaks volumes about the team. Like, nobody had like 12 assists, and that's how they got to 34. They got there by everyone sharing and everyone moving. And Fox has talked about not having the pick and roll to rely on a lot. And I still think that this team needs to go back to the pick and roll for a good 15 to 20 possessions per game, at least. But the fact that they don't have to over rely on one offensive set, which is kind of what they did last year, where it became extremely boring, like, to watch. Like, it's the same exact thing, boring and predictable. And so I think this whole, like, everyone touching the ball, everyone sharing, I liked how Huerter even like philosophically put it, about how the ball has energy and moving the energy and all that stuff. I really do think it's a way that they're building chemistry quickly while playing basketball. So it has like a dual function.
Yeah, and two things also just stand out after watching that win over the Blazers. One, I might have more question marks. Like, the Kings and the Blazers to me, and I'll lump in, the Lakers, the Pelicans, pretty much everyone in that discussion of that bottom half of the West and who could contend for a play-in tournament, playoff spot, what have you. Obviously, you can't take much from that game from a Portland standpoint, so I'm very, very much looking forward to tonight's game in San Francisco against the Warriors. But I really think that's a poor outing by Portland. I don't think that's something that they're not going to look like. They probably won't look that bad ever again this season. In my opinion, and if they do, that's troubling because they have no business looking as poorly as they were. But I do feel the Kings are still a big question mark, and that's mainly because we don't know what it looks like when adversity strikes, and there's just so much unknown with this team, and it's part of the the shit that I get from people when they go, "Oh, Sean, commit, make a prediction. How much do you think it'll be?" And I'm trying to be like cautious when I do it, and I've explained it before where it's like you can look at the Warriors, for example, and yeah, they won a championship team. So I don't even want to say that. Like even Memphis or Denver, like the makeup of those teams are still very much the same. The Clippers are a team that I think we're all pretty high on. I'm not so sure that there's many people who are looking at them at being in the bottom part of the West. But at least when they add pieces to help the rotation and what they've already got, you feel like that's going to have results right away. With this team, it's like so much is different that you almost don't know what the personality or the resolve of this team could be, and that's what makes them so hard to like try to figure out and forecast. I honestly feel that this could be the best chance. I mean, obviously, like best chance at a winning team that they've had in 16 years. I'm with you there, but it also I want to see what the mental toughness of this team is, because I think the thing that sticks out more than just poor defense over the course of the 16-year stretch in this playoff drought is just how mentally weak a Sacramento Kings team can be. And that to me is still a huge unanswerable question. I hope it's bigger because I think they do have a lot of guys with a lot of, whether you want to call it intestinal or testicular fortitude. I think that they've got some dogs on their team. I really do.
Yeah, I'm going to point out too. I think you brought up this group of teams that are kind of around the same, and I do throw the Pelicans in there. I know a lot of people just like, I mean, I love my guy Mark Spears, but I mean, he was out there. I saw a clip of him either today or yesterday talking about how he thinks Zion will be in the MVP conversation. Like, man, that dude has to play more than, well, he has to actually play because he didn't play last year and he barely played the year before that. So in order for us to like put any on what he could be, the other problem is they just haven't played together at all. So while like he hasn't even played with Valanciunas on the court, so we don't even know what that team is going to look like. And so I think that they're going to have some growing pains within what they're doing. But the point I was going to get to is if you look at Portland and you look at the Pelicans and you look at the Lakers, I mean, the Kings have Mike Brown, and those guys all have inexperienced coaches, either guys who have 1 year under their belt in Chauncey Billups and Willie Green, or Darvin Ham, who's what's that?
I was just saying Darvin Ham.
Oh yeah, and Darvin Ham, and so so what you're looking at is that's the one thing I think that the Kings can look at and go, okay, well, if we're gonna look at the coaching ratings for our team, not only do you have a coach with a .616 win percentage over 8 seasons who's taken the team to the finals, but you also have a guy who's been in the league for 31 years, who has been through the ups and downs, who was just with the Warriors for 6 years, who ran one of the great defenses. And I think the point is, it's not that like those guys don't know what they're doing and Mike Brown, is this guru, but Mike Brown is like taking like 31 years of like adult education on professional basketball. And some of these guys, while they're players or while they've been assistants, he just has so much more experience. So when things do go wrong, and I don't mean things go wrong as in the team starts to crumble because they're weak, like mentally, but when you need to make changes, Mike Brown has book after book after book of changes he can make, where I don't know that everyone else has that in this group of coaching that are going to be competing with the Kings. And so it's definitely one thing that stands out to me that, if I had to bank on who's going to be there, it's probably the team with LeBron first, because he's a coach on the floor. But then after that, I think it's pretty wide open. And I trust that Mike Brown has more experience and understanding in the world of coaching than the other guys. And actually in the other guys combined. Like you can take all of them, put them in one big bucket, and Mike Brown has more experience.
I'll fight back a little bit on New Orleans specifically, not with the coaching, but I am one of the people that just thinks New Orleans is a better roster by a decent bit. Like we'll have to see what Zion gives. But even outside of that, like when they got CJ last year, I think they were really rolling offensively. Brandon Ingram is one of the top players in the league as well. Like Valanciunas is a force to be reckoned with too. And then after that, you have really good wing perimeter defenders. I'm a big Trey Murphy guy as a complementary piece that can play defense on the wing and knock down open shots. I think he went like 7 of 10 the other night in a preseason game. So take that for what you will. Herb Jones is already like an all defense type of guy. Like I am pretty big on New Orleans as a roster. I think Sacramento could be in that conversation, but I'm pretty comfortably putting New Orleans above that. But I think that Portland and LA, when it comes to the Lakers, are the two teams that I've thought for a little while now that the Kings are probably competing for that 9-10 spot in the Western Conference. And it's definitely a good start that you're off to. I'm a little worried about I feel great about Mike Brown too. I've loved everything I've seen from Mike Brown. I think it's just starting to scare me a little bit because like everybody's on the same page that it's great. And maybe I'm just not used to it. Like, it's just weird. Yeah, that's just a weird feeling to me when like I get it's a low
covering
bar.
the team for 13 years or for 20 like Sean has.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, everything seems okay here. What's happening?
The PTSD, you don't want...
Has this feeling happened before and then everything just goes downhill?
Of course
it does. Yeah. Michael Malone.
Yeah.
11 and 13. Viral meningitis.
Yeah. But they were 9-5 when viral meningitis hit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. They ended up 11-13. Malone's canned, and you have 3 head coaches that year.
Yeah.
It was dog shit. But it's crazy. You were going through all the scenario. Yeah. You were going through all the scenarios with like the Pelicans, and you didn't even mention Zion Williamson. And it makes me wonder, and maybe you can't, maybe that's the right way to do it because, we haven't seen him for a better part of 2 years. But can they be a playoff team without him? Like, let's just say, he buzzard's luck and his foot is still a problem, can't play, whatever. Like, how does that look? Are they can they be a playoff team without him? And I don't think they'll have to be. Like, I think, knock on wood, I hope everything goes great for that kid. I'd love to see him. I think the league will be a better place with him being a major factor. But by virtue of not seeing him for so long, like, who knows what to expect for them. But I still, for as much as I love Brandon Ingram and Trey Murphy, as you mentioned, and, Valanciunas obviously is a force, but CJ McCollum is still a gunner. And I don't know if they're a playoff team unless they have Zion. I think Zion adds a dynamic that really no team has.
I actually think the reverse. I wonder if they can be a playoff team with him, in all honesty, because if I look at that team, I think they are a playoff team without him because you have it set up where Brandon Ingram can go do what he wants to do and CJ McCollum can do what he wants to do. And, they've got scores. They've got enough scores where they can bring in these defensive-minded guys. You add in another guy who loves to play around the basket, who's going to clog the lane for everything, especially when you bring in, their other big man into the mix. And I think the other thing that's missed, he's such a young player that he still doesn't know the game like he needs to know the game. And so, we always talked about Marvin Bagley not being able to figure out. Like, look, Marvin Bagley can walk onto any court and average 18 points a game. I guarantee you, if you give Marvin Bagley 30 minutes a game, he's going to get 18 and 8. The problem is, can you win a single one of the games? And we don't know that about Zion either because he's missed so much time that, like, will he understand defensive concepts? Will he be able to have his teammates back on the defensive end? Will he know how to play within the system? And those are things like, man, the game of basketball, you have to, it's when we hear the term stacking days, but it's kind of like when you're taking math when you're young. Like, if you just go from integrated 1 to integrated 3, which is the new math stuff, and you skip integrated 2, well, you're missing like all of these concepts that you don't understand at all. And so that's, for me, that's what his career looks like. Like, how many concepts is he missing because he's missed so much time? And so I think that they're going to be really good if he's not there. It's going to be on him to fit in, or it's going to be on an inexperienced coach to see if he can fit him in and see if he can make things work. And, like, what if he has to ask him to come off the bench? How does that go? And, that might be the case because it might be very difficult to fit him into their system and have it all work. But
I
that's
actually
just
think
me.
it's that scenario right there, James. I actually think it's necessary because there is an earn it level, and Valanciunas is a very capable starting center. Maybe ideally he is your backup, but however it looks, like I think you need to bring him along slowly. I mean, think about this. Like we were talking about the Clippers a minute ago. Like Kawhi Leonard doesn't play back to backs. Probably, I mean, he's coming off another injury. Like probably won't be playing back to backs. How does that impact the Clippers? They're still a very capable winning team without him, but
And John
obviously
Wall
with him,
hasn't
they're-
played in almost 2
Right.
years. I mean,
Yeah, and
there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions, and I think going back to Zion too. Just shout out our buddy Howard Beck. I mean, tremendous piece in SI today. If you get a chance to read it on just kind of the dark place that Zion has been in the past year.
UC Davis grad. Go ahead, Brenden.
I mean, I don't want to get too deep into Zion, I guess, but I just think that guy's ridiculous. I mean, we'll see. He has to be healthy. I kind of think it's more of a like my worries with him fitting, because I do think that there are concerns with that. Like, it's not just a seamless fit to make this work. But I think if there's anything, it's okay, these other guys have to figure out what they're going to do differently, because like Zion's got to go out there and just do what he does. Like, this guy's ridiculous. I'm shocked, by the way. I just found out the other day that he was an all-star, not last year, a year prior. I didn't know he already got an all-star. He did play 61 games that year. I thought it was less, but like Bagley can go out there and put up numbers and Zion can do the same, but the efficiency is just like night and day. Bagley will get an ugly 18 and Zion will just like brute force his way to 25 on 60% from the field. Like, to me, if anything, it's, do we have the right pieces to complement Zion? Because I'm not like benching Zion because he doesn't fit with CJ McCollum, who wants to take pull-up mid-range shots. Like, I'm like, okay, no, sorry, Zion's our guy, and CJ's going to have to figure it out. Or maybe we can't play Herb Jones because we have Zion. We can't play Zion because we have Herb Jones or Valanciunas.
And Brendan, outside of LeBron and Luka that year, Zion might have been the most popular player in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he's a wonderful talent. I do. But you have to play, and you have to stay healthy, and you've got to learn the game, and you've got to learn how to play within the concept of the game, and we have to see if he can do that. And the point that you made that they haven't really built a team around him, they haven't been able to build the team around him, and that's the truth of it. So where the Kings built their entire team around Sabonis and Fox, they didn't even do it this offseason. You didn't see major changes there, where they're trying to structure a team that can actually play with Zion. And I think that speaks volumes about who they are as a franchise and what they have to be as a franchise, just because of the uncertainty. So anyway, I didn't expect to talk about Zion for this long.
Leave it to Sean to talk about a Dookie, right?
Yeah, we'll get it back to Kings. We do have Rashawn Holmes made it through practice today for the first time after missing 3 or 4 straight days with a stomach ailment, a non-COVID stomach ailment, but was not able to hang out and talk to the media because he started to feel like out of sorts again and went in the back. And Keegan Murray is going to, we don't know if he's going to miss a game against Phoenix or not. We're going to have to see if he boards a plane later and flies into Phoenix like tomorrow morning. But he's a guy who's going to be questionable going into tomorrow with a non-COVID related illness. We haven't got to see Rashawn Holmes hardly at all, and that's kind of a bummer. But Keegan Murray is like, it's almost, we keep talking about this, but it's stunning to watch. And the players around him, they don't seem that caught off guard by how good he is. And just the fact that every time he walks on the court, it's so easy. It's effortless. I mean, 7 of 10 from 3 over the first 2 games of the preseason. And I know someone called out on Twitter, he clanked the first one so bad on his 3-point shot. And then he hit the next 5. Like, it's just like, come on. Like, he is ridiculous. And we asked Fox about it, and he's just like, not surprised by any of it. Not surprised. It's what he's doing in practice is what we're seeing. Where are you guys at with Keegan? And I guess do we think he's going to start? Do we have any idea, or is it KZ Okpala?
When he's open, I'm expecting it to go in. And
Every
there's
time.
not really two ways about it. Every time. He says the same. De'Aaron said the same. And I think De'Aaron's assessment of you kind of look up and you're like, damn, he has 16. And that seems to be the Keegan Murray experience. Just doing it all within the flow of the offense. When it comes to starting, I'm a big KZ Okpala guy. Surprise, surprise. I like defensive guys. And I think that there's value in being able to put him on Damian Lillard from the jump, and they did the same thing with LeBron, putting him on those initiators and just making him uncomfortable. How many times last year would you see someone come into town and say it's Damian Lillard and he hits his first 3 shots and you're like, oh shit, we're in for a long night. And it's I think having KZ out there to disrupt players and not allow them to get into the rhythm. And then also on the other side, not asking De'Aaron Fox to be guarding Damian Lillard, and instead he can focus on getting into his own offensive rhythm. Not that he's not doing anything on defense. He still has his assignment. I think he was on Simon's at the beginning of that game. But I think that there is value in the first look that these primary initiators are seeing are KZ, and that will transition to maybe Keegan or De'Aaron or HB at some point. You'll see Davion thrown on them, and just these different star initiators seeing different bodies and different types of defenders, I think is important. And we've heard Mike Brown say that it's about who's closing games or even closing halves that's more important. And Keegan closed the half yesterday, and I still would expect, even with KZ starting, that you'll see Keegan closing games.
Yeah,
my
he had
answer,
20. Go ahead, James.
My quick answer to you is 67. There was at least 67 games where I looked out and saw someone going off on the Kings and thought, oh, look, they don't have anyone that can stop that guy. So go ahead, Sean.
No, that's well put. Yeah, and usually I had my head buried in my computer at that point. With just anyway, the thing that sticks out to me too when you mentioned KZ is the fact that he's really not playing a lot of minutes, and he only had 12 in the Portland game. And in the second half, they started Trey Lyles and brought KZ off the bench for that second half. The tinkering is in full effect, but I also feel like Keegan ends up with more minutes each time. And I think that's a good thing. However, I think they very much look at it as not wanting to start their I don't think they want to start their 5 best players. And I think you can count Keegan among them at this point right now. Whether he remains in that 5 best, we'll see. But I fully anticipate him starting at some point. But I don't think it really matters right now, especially if he's getting these minutes. And we talked about a couple podcasts ago what the expectation is there, and I had it around 28 just to be cautious. But yeah, I mean, it's not going to surprise me if we're seeing him at 30 minutes a game and averaging 30 minutes a game, possibly even a little bit more than that. But if it's off the bench and that's their bench that they have, that second unit needs scoring, and they have it. You've got someone like Keegan and Malik Monk, and Davion's obviously not a score-first type of guard, but I think just some of the pieces that they have around him ends up being a pretty solid second unit. So it's going to sort itself out. I'm curious to see, Mike Brown kind of stopped short of saying not necessarily a dress rehearsal in this exhibition game against Phoenix. And then, of course, you got the Lakers to finish out the week here. But I think the rotations are going to be a little bit tighter, and hopefully he still goes about 12 deep. And, if we get another blowout like we did against the Blazers, maybe he goes even deeper than that and kind of unloads the bench so you can see some of these guys that you might have some question marks around. But so far, so good. And I think the sample size with Keegan Murray, I don't think he's really concerned with it. I love his answer. He's like, if I take care of business on the court, that takes, that all kind of takes care of itself. So it was such a grown-up, mature response, and it was believable. That's the thing. You can sometimes see a young player say something like that about how starting doesn't matter. It's all about the team. And sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm not buying that from this guy, or, because certain guys are going to want to get their shine. And I just think that's, one of the things that you just don't get from Keegan Murray. I mean, the guy doesn't really appear to have much ego or much care about the numbers he's going to put up. I think he wants to do everything in kind of that team aspect of things.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one thing that I want to point out too is that I think KZ Okpala, first of all, I agree with Brendan. Like when it comes to I've been super impressed with the way that he takes on Dame or he can switch to almost anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting thing. I've also been impressed with his hustle. I've been impressed with his rebounding. Like he's flying in there and going up into the trees and going crazy. But I'll also say this. I think KZ had a really, really good moment in the third quarter. They didn't start him. They started Trey Lyles, like you guys mentioned. But then they brought in KZ, and I thought he looked really good with the second unit. And I thought to myself, oh, that's a really good moment for him. Because there's always this issue that if he doesn't start, is he in the second unit or do they go to someone else? Do they go to a Trey Lyles? Do they go to a Chima Moneke or Chimezi Metu to kind of give them something different? And I think when he showed that he could look good with the second unit, then that was really, for me, again, it was a good moment because it's one thing to go out there with 4 scores and look like you're okay because you're out there playing defense and you're not being asked to do anything. It's a whole other thing when you're out there with 2 scores and you've got to be active and you've got to shoot and you've got to do everything that comes with being a basketball player. And so I think we saw a lot of that in his stint in the second. And then I'll mention this too. We were at practice today. Mike Brown mentioned that the 3 guys who did not play in the previous game, which is Quinn Cook, Sam Merrill, and Chima Moneke, that they will play on Wednesday. And so I think a lot of people were quick to point out that, whoa, those look like the 3 cuts. And it could still be that way. But at the same time, I think he's at least going to give them a little bit more time to see what they can do. And then having conversations, I do think that the Kings will end up waiving players before we get to the deadline, the drop dead deadline for this. And they probably will add another player or 2 during training camp, give them an Exhibit 10, which allows them to pay that player a $50,000 bonus if after the Kings cut them, they go to the Stockton Kings, and as long as they stay there for 60 days, they'll get a bonus of $50,000, and that's substantial when you look at the G League is only paying right now. I think it's $37,000 a year's average salary, so a $50,000 bump is pretty substantial. And also, while I'm on that subject, Chima Moneke and Sam Merrill, they're not Exhibit 10 players. They got Chima got a $250,000 bonus, and Sam Merrill got a $150,000 bonus for showing up to camp. So the Kings can't send them to the G League. They can't be one of their 4 designated players at the end of camp. And so the Kings can designate 4 players that they want to place on their G League team. And if those players decide to stay in the league and they're not picked up by someone else and make some other roster, they do go straight to the Stockton Kings. Well, because Chima and Sam Merrill got over the $50,000 maximum for that, the Kings can't do that with those players. And just to clarify, neither of those guys have been G League players in the past. Like Sam Merrill has played in the G League, but he was on a roster and got sent down to the G League, which is different than being a G League player, like on a G League contract or a 2-way player. So no one owns his rights from what I can tell, and no one owns Chima Moneke's rights. So when the G League draft happens, I think it's in the next 2 weeks, right? The G League draft happens.
Might be, is it? Yeah, it might be a little over a week. Yeah, I think it might be closer. Yeah.
It's after cut down date. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's after the official start of the season. So the Kings can go out and try to get those players and bring them into, if they do end up waiving those players. Where Quinn Cook, from what I can tell, signed an Exhibit 10, and the Kings even own his rights because he played for them last year, and so he can go to the G League team.
Are you sure he signed an Exhibit 10? I don't think they did.
Spotrac has him as an Exhibit 10.
Did they?
I looked,
okay.
But I didn't see. I haven't had that confirmed, and I haven't asked, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not. Maybe
you got
I don't
more guaranteed money.
No, I don't think the Exhibit 10 part is necessarily accurate because I think. Anyway, I don't want to get lost in the weeds on that, but back to the Merrill Moneke thing too. They could potentially keep one of them on their roster and send them to Stockton for a few games. You're just basically, you wouldn't assign them. You could have them go down. You could basically send them down to
But
play.
they would count towards your 17.
Well, if they make
Correct. They would count towards your
your
17 though.
Yeah, if they make your roster, your 15
Correct.
standard
Yeah.
roster, and then
and
Nemias and Keon are the two ways.
two-way.
But
Yeah, because I actually feel if something like that were to happen, let's just say it's Merrill, Monecki, maybe even Quinn if he. Well, I want to remove him because he was a roster player last year. The two players you mentioned that would have to be drafted. If one of them were to make the actual roster, clearly they're not cracking the rotation necessarily in the early going of the season, if at all. And so to get them to get run and just get any kind of run, you could have them part of your 17 and assign them to the G League, to Stockton, to let them get some games under their belt.
yeah, but that means you got to cut someone else. So. And that's the problem.
Right,
And
correct.
if you're looking at the way the Kings, basically Dellavedova got a $250,000 guarantee, and he makes another $250 if he's on the roster after January 10th, I believe. And then Chima makes another $250 if he is on the roster on opening night, and then Shemezi Metu has a fully guaranteed contract. And I think that's pretty much it, right? Everyone else, we kind of know where they stand.
Is Monecki guaranteed? I thought his was just another.
No, I meant Shemezi
escalator.
Metu. I said Shemezi Metu. Yeah, Chima has a 250 escalation if he makes
Correct.
a roster in game one, where Shemezi Metu is fully guaranteed for the season. Mm-hmm. They had to guarantee his contract back in July. Complex. Brennan?
Quinn Cook, Sam Merrill, and Chima Monecki make sense as the three, to be honest. Like, I was definitely one person that was looking there and saying, those are the three guys they don't play and they need to cut three players. I had missed until you said it during this, James, that Mike Brown pointed out that those guys will all play going into next game. That's an interesting note. But I've kind of viewed Merrill as the 20th guy, to be honest. He felt like the one that made a lot of sense. And then after that, between Cook and Delhi, and then are you thinking Monecki? Are you thinking Bazemore? Are you maybe considering Metu being the odd man out? So I think that, I don't know, it is notable to me. We'll see how they look in these next games and how much they actually end up playing, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was those three.
It's interesting, too. They use Chimezi as a reserve 5. Like, him and Trey Lyles came in together, and we saw that at practice as well, where they were using Chimezi as a backup 5. And I just think it's interesting, so because it does give him a little bit more versatility. But I still think, like, Trey Lyles has played extremely well. Like, he's a guy that he just doesn't make any mistakes. And, Dellavedova, I think, has been very impressive in his ability to run a team. And I think Ken Bazemore has looked spry. Like, initially in camp, I was like, he didn't look too spry. But as we've gotten into the preseason, it's like, oh, look at that. He looks solid. So I think it's they've got some difficult decisions, but I also think that they're going to make one or two of those decisions before the roster has to be officially trimmed from 20 down to officially 17 with the two-ways. I think we're going to see them do that, and then I think that they're going to pick up one or two players and give them exhibit 10s so they can keep them around.
And there's also, what shakes out from other teams. I think the three that I've identified could change from week to week. But right now I still have it as Sam Merrill, Quinn Cook, and Kent Bazemore. And, Dellavedova is still someone I have a huge question mark around, especially with, it's not going to take much. You don't have to, it's not a huge guarantee, but it is something that it's worth watching. I do agree with you, James, in your assessment. I think Delhi has looked like he has his legs with him. But obviously Monecki is right there as well. But we'll see what these next two games come through. I think any of those four are kind of on the bubble, and if those were my three, those would be my three right now that I think that they would cut would be Baze, Merrill, Cook.
Interesting. So you don't think Bazemore? Okay. I mean, we'll see. Well, I like Baze's versatility still, his ability to play the 2, the 3. even a little bit of one here and there if he needed him to, just in a pinch. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's totally possible. And I don't know what Bazemore's contract is for the season, or how much guaranteed money he got, but it's very possible he didn't get any guaranteed money because I haven't seen a bunch like on any of the, like we haven't heard any of that. And I haven't gone to his agent and hit him up and said, hey, what's Baze making? But I assume it's a veteran minimum and, for years of service. And I don't think there's guaranteed money attached to it. Outside of that, I think the one thing too that I was watching when we were on Sunday was that number one, the dunk by Domas was spectacular, and he looked spry. And that was
Was
that
it
was
ever?
His comment today was hilarious.
I think he's like caught off guard that everyone thinks it's crazy that he dunked.
It's like, y'all know I'm like 7 foot, right?
Yeah, it's like 6'10", 6'11". Like he can hammer a ball down. But that was fun because he doesn't usually go up in a crowd. But I was going to also point out that I think that that Harrison Barnes has actually looked really, really good. And I think, like the demise of Harrison Barnes is greatly like overstated. I don't think that he's a player that's going to be on the slide. I think he had a bad defensive season, but offensively he was really good last year. And I think he fits his roster really well as a guy who almost it doesn't matter what he does. He's just really solid and you can count on him. And you don't need him to score 16 or 18 points a game or 30. As long as he's consistent and he hits a shot and he rebounds and he plays defense, then I think that he'll be there, at least until the deadline when they have to make a decision on what they're going to do with him. But I really do think that there's a good possibility he'll make it all the way through the season.
HB has not had a shot go down, and the Kings have still been fine. And I think that that's something that just like you couldn't say last year. There was only one game. I'm sorry, there were actually 3 games last year that HB didn't make a 3, and the Kings won a game. But like he went 1 of 5 in that game against Portland, 5 of 11 from the field. He did have a really nice move where I think he faked like he was going middle and then went baseline and lifted up for a dunk that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. To your point, kind of looking spry. But I think that it's just easier to feel good about HB when you're not relying on him to have 20 every single night. And you have other players that when a shot happens to not be going down, you're not like, damn, we needed more out of HB tonight. I think it's so much easier to overlook those nights because as anybody should be allowed to have, that's not like a just star in the league. I think when you're talking about HB in better context, like he's in now, it's a lot easier to feel good about him. And I think the role that he has on this team is perfect for him when maybe last year he was asked to do a little bit too much.
I think it's also fresh legs right now too. Like he took a dude baseline, went up for a 2-handed dunk, had that nice up and under reverse. And I think his length defensively in the passing lanes has really been helpful, especially for a guy who's been pretty well documented, to have some deficiencies on defense in the recent seasons. So, yeah, man, I'm encouraged by what he's bringing. I think he's looked good. I really do. I think he has a carefree spirit when he's on the court right now. I still, damn it, shoot the ball more, man. Just I'd like to see him shoot more out. I'm always that way, but he's ultimate pro, man. He really is, and I think, yeah, he's the guy we all identified as maybe not being around, but he's someone that's, if he's around, he's going to fit this team very, very well. And he's played for Mike. He knows all about Mike Brown. He knows the type of style he wants to play, and he suits that structure very, very well for this roster.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think that he's a guy that just naturally fits with this team. And I asked Huerter about this in the locker room. The structure of the locker room is always an intriguing situation, like where they put players. And like HB is on one end and Fox is next to him. And then on the other far end of the locker room is Sabonis and then Keegan Murray and then Kevin Huerter. like boom, boom, boom. And I love that the Kings have veterans, guys who are in their second or third contracts that are taking Keegan under his wing and kind of HB is going to be one of those guys. And I think that there are a lot of similarities between Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray just as like personalities. And so I'm glad that Harrison Barnes is still in Sacramento. Like again, I've never like if you're going to trade him, you're trading because you have to trade him because you're going to lose him. And if you lose him for nothing and you can't replace who he is and what he does, then you're in trouble next season. So I'm never going to advocate for just trading Harrison Barnes to get rid of him. But I certainly think that, you have to keep all options open because there's a good chance that he won't be back next season. But for this year, if he's there, I think he's a perfect role model for a guy like Keegan Murray to just show him like this is what the daily grind is. This is how you get, and not only that, but this is how you treat the media. This is how you can be a member of the community. All of the little things that he's able to do, and they do have some ties for both of them being from Iowa, and I think it's good.
Agreed. One other thing that stood out to me a little bit that I feel like is worth noting is just all the rebounding. And it's the second game in a row that we saw them be really impressive as a rebounding team after years before they were just horrible there. And
27th in the league in rebounding.
And that's even after the handful of games they had with Domas, who's one of the best rebounders in the league. So obviously Domas is a big help, but I thought it was really interesting to hear Coach Brown say that it's an emphasis from the top on down, and like mentioned Monty, that rebounding is something that they are really emphasizing going into this year. And I think striking the balance on rebounding, offensive rebounding even, but also getting back in defense on transition is something that's going to kind of be figured out, or maybe they already have their plans for what spot of the floor you're on if you're going to rebound or get back in transition. But I think rebounding is going to be a big difference compared to what we saw in years prior.
Yeah, last season the Golden State Warriors finished number 2 in the league in defensive rebounding at 35.7 per game, and number 7 in total rebounding at 7 rebounds per game. I mean, at number 7, we had 45.5 rebounds per game. And their leading rebounder had 7.3 rebounds per game, and that was Looney and Draymond Green. Draymond Green only played 46 games. And I bring that up, and even like the third leading rebounder on the Warriors last season was Steph Curry. I guess Otto Porter and then Steph Curry. But I bring that up because like it's subtle that you're seeing an emphasis on everyone going and getting a rebound versus what we've seen in the past where it's like, well, if our bigs don't get it, then we're in trouble. The other guys are sprinting back to the other end of the court. So, like, ending possessions with a rebound is huge. It's why I also, like, I put very little stock in shot blocking. It's one thing to have a rim protector, but blocking a shot isn't a turnover. How many times do you see guys get a rebound for their team off of a block? It's not like a steal. And so, having guys that are actually doing something that impacts like possession by possession, like defensive rebounding, is tremendous. And I think the Kings have an opportunity specifically because they have Sabonis, but then the concept that Mike Brown played with last year as a guy who ran the defense for the Golden State Warriors to like put such a heavy emphasis on rebounding, I think is tremendous. And this team could actually be one of the top rebounding teams in the league, in my opinion.
How do you guys think the De'Aaron Fox Domas situation is? Obviously through 2 games it looks fantastic, but obviously any team that loses a star player, you're usually not going to do what the Memphis Grizzlies did last year with when Ja went down. But do you feel like they're in a way if one of those guys goes down that they can stomach it? I'm kind of stumbling around the question just because I haven't really given it much thought myself, but it just feels like such a glaring weakness on my end that if they were to lose one of those guys, I instantly feel pretty bad about where this team could look, what this team could be and look like.
I feel pretty bad too. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you just don't have anybody to fill those same spots.
The
Like,
depth isn't there. Yeah, it's not there.
no, and not in. There's serviceable players to fill those positions, but the skill sets are just so drastically different than anybody else. Like Domas's passing specifically, I think the team has built so much around having a passing big. It's something like Mike Brown talked about, and he complimented the passing of the other bigs, but I think it's just a massive drop off after Domas, even when you get to Rashawn, or if you want to mess with Mezzi at the 5 or anything like that. And then I think that De'Aaron breaking guys down off the dribble is something that's going to be important in certain games. Like I love the ball movement, but there's sometimes when like you play a team that's just switching constantly, sometimes you're going to need to run a pick and roll or just break somebody down in isolation. And like, I don't know that there's too many guys on this team that can do that. The same level of De'Aaron and paint touches being a point of emphasis. Like going from De'Aaron to Davion is a pretty big drop off in my mind. So, I mean, I think you could say this about most teams, but I do think if one of those two main guys go down, the Kings are in a pretty tough spot.
I'm going to disagree. I think that it would hurt them, sure, and you don't want anything long term.
Right.
But I think the way that they're running the ball, as opposed to a pick and roll centric offense surrounding De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, the way that they're running the high pick and roll or the high screen and shooting off of that, like it's just to me it feels like this is a team that's going to have like, you know, one guy averaging the most, which is De'Aaron, and another guy who's averaging close to 20. And then you're going to have a big group of guys that are averaging between 12 and 16. And by a big group, I think it could be as many as like 6 players that are averaging between 12 and 16 points per game. And they're going to take turns night in and night out. And I think the way that the motion offense that they're using, it allows for you to plug and play different players differently, where it's not so heavily reliant on just the skill set of those two players. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I feel like either one you lose, you if you lost Fox, you can still play the same way. If you lost Sabonis, it drastically changes the way you play. Even defensively, like things are drastically different. So I guess it's my way of saying I feel like you could less afford to lose Sabonis than Fox, only because I feel like based on his playmaking ability, and I still feel as a roster they're going to try to push the pace, and I feel like they're talented enough to get scoring elsewhere. Whereas if you lose Domantas Sabonis for an extended period of time, I feel like you have to almost disrupt everything from a gameplay standpoint.
We'll see. We'll see how they play it out.
And hopefully hopefully that doesn't, come to light. It's just something that I look at and I go, ooh, what if?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think that, if the Nuggets lose Jokic,
right.
I mean, they're toast. I mean, they're in a bunch of trouble. Okay, so let's get to the business of basketball. This is something that came up on D-Lo and Casey on Monday. And I know a lot of people have looked at the Kings' schedule and been like, oh, it's brutal. The beginning is so tough. And other people are like, well, how tough is that team going to be? What if Draymond misses 5 games or suspended 10 games and misses, 2 games against the Sacramento Kings, like the what if game? But then my point would be that there comes a time where a team stops looking at the schedule and stops focusing on the schedule and just goes out and plays games. And like, I don't know when it happened, but like, I remember back to the season where everything shut down. So like 3 years ago, like the Memphis Grizzlies I think they had 18 games remaining in the season when the pandemic hit. And I had them winning like 3 of those games. It was something brutal. And the Kings had 17 games left, and it was a toss-up, like how many games they could win. But Memphis had like a 3.5 game lead, and I thought both Memphis and both Sacramento and New Orleans both had an opportunity to not just track down Memphis, but fly past them. You get to the next year, and then of course last season, and I don't think Memphis looks at the schedule anymore, as far as like how many games are we going to win, or what's a tough spot, or like they don't care. Like they can play without Ja. like what we're talking about here with Sabonis and stuff. Ja goes, when he misses like 22 games, they go like 20-2 or something ridiculous. When, like, is that going to be the moment where we kind of know that the Kings might have something? If they can just forget about who it is that's on the schedule and go out and play a really good game, win, lose, or draw, but play a good game against just about anybody. Because that's what you're kind of waiting for, that moment where, like, the schedule really doesn't matter to you anymore.
I would answer it this way, because I feel like, while you're right, I don't think that the Kings are guilty at looking at the schedule. I think the Kings are more guilty of playing to the level of opposition historically, and that's a kind of a bigger problem. I
think it's part of what we're saying. I think it is.
Yeah, I think, especially when, I'll use De'Aaron Fox as an example, because I've been critical of the fact that, he can go out and have usually a pretty stellar game or effort against somebody like Damian Lillard, or even though Lillard has usually cooked him pretty well, but someone like Damian Lillard, John Wall, guys that he, pretty well known, and then goes up against the guys like Dennis Schroeder in the past, and he kind of comes in, and lights them up. I think it's more of a fan thing, because I really don't feel that the team, that the players do like coaches do. And I know Dave Yeager was really good at taking the schedule and breaking it down in 10-game increments. I have tended to do the same thing, because your personality can change pretty much through of your team through 10-game little increments. I think it takes, it's the old moniker that it takes 25 games to know the real personality and makeup of your team. But I think if you break it down in 10-game increments, you can have a nice sample size to really make decisions based off of. But I feel like, for example, I think particularly you're getting the Warriors 3 times in the very beginning of the season. That could be a good thing. Like, you don't want to get the Warriors from, July to through February or anything like that, and the next time you see them is really towards the end of the season, where things ought to, at least from the Golden State standpoint, be pretty well locked up. So, yeah, maybe you get a fresh Golden State team that first game on the home court, and then the next two matchups you get, maybe you're able to steal one or two there, just with a real solid effort. So, I do feel like those are different things. Playing to the level of opposition, because I think it has more to do with the individual players than it does so much as the team. And I don't feel that they're looking at like their forecast. I don't feel like they forecast their own wins, going like, okay, in this stretch we should go, 9-6 or 9-5, and they pencil in what should be a win and what should be a loss. I feel it's more of a positional battle, where guys will look at who is opposing them or who they have to oppose, and that's where it gets guilty. So it's almost the same thing, but maybe not quite. What do you think, Brenden?
I think offensively, eventually it won't matter. I think that, barring you're playing a defensive player of the year caliber player, and you have to, you're not driving at Gobert the same way that you're driving at Damian Jones or whoever else. But I think that offensively is where they'll eventually get like an identity and consistency in how you see them play on a night-to-night basis. I think defensively, it's not looking at it in, at least I don't imagine looking at it in large chunks of games or anything like that, breaking the season into different portions. But I think it's just a night-by-night basis, game by game of, okay, we're going into this next game like we just saw with LeBron, AD, and D. Jones. Probably need to play a little bit of a bigger lineup. We're going to put Trey Lyles in the second unit. And then when we're playing in against Portland, where they have a lot smaller of a team, you're talking Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant, Josef Nurkic, and even after that on their bench is smaller players. Instead of Trey Lyles, we're actually going to put Terrence Davis in the backup unit and then slide Keegan Murray down to the 4 and go for a smaller lineup. And to me, that's like defensively is where those adjustments are being made. And I think that Mike Brown, with not having the most talented defensive roster, just is going to need to be very creative on the defensive end. And I think that's something that's just going to vary on a night-to-night basis, and where we'll see a lot of differences for this team. But I think that offensively, they should be able to eventually find an identity, because I think we still don't know what the identity of this team is. And that's something that needs to be defined, and where this consistency will probably start is once we can like identify what the identity is. to me, that'll be on offense, and defense is going to be about being creative and switching it up.
Yeah, I've looked like watching the first the first two games here. I've thought that at the end of the game, the Kings were the team with the identity, and the other ones were the Lakers and the Trailblazers. Neither one had an identity at all. Like that to me, it was pretty stunning to watch in both games where you're just like, and you guys have no idea where you're going. Like I don't know how good those teams can be at all.
That could be an overreaction of preseason basketball too, though.
No, of course. Yeah.
I will say this: it hasn't taken the one question mark I did not have, if that makes sense. I didn't have a question of will this team be a solid offensive team? Like, no, like I honestly, it would not surprise me to see them be a top 10 offensive team in the league, especially if they play the way Mike Brown wants to play, which is a run and gun team, but. It's the defensive side of things, which is the biggest question mark. Can they sustain and improve based off of last year? And as we've talked about in previous podcasts, where, I think if they can get to 20 defensively, that would be a really big leap for them, being 27 or 28th defensively, what they were last year. If they can crack that top 20, even better. But I think offensively, this team could be a top 10 offensive scoring team in the league.
They were number 9 offensive rating 2 years ago, and they were number 25 last year.
Yeah, last year was direct.
Yeah, well, and they were still like pace wise. I think they finished 8th in pace. All right, let's wrap this thing up. We've kept you long enough, everyone out there. Let's get to final thoughts. Brenden, we'll start with you today. What do you got? Final thoughts from Brenden Nunes.
That I think the LA and Portland games were just very, very different. And I think we could be talking about that Laker game a lot differently if LeBron and AD played the entire game, because it's easy to forget the Kings looked really bad for those first 5 minutes, like genuinely horrible. And we're sitting here rightfully praising them hitting 21 threes in that game against Portland. They hit 9 in that game against the Lakers. And I think one of the big issues last year was just this inconsistency from three-point shooting. I think they're going to lie somewhere in the middle of those two, but it can't be as drastic from one night to the next when it comes to three-point shooting this year. So feel great about Portland, the Portland win. It's understandable why everyone does, but I think it's easy to forget. I thought that LA game had some pretty worrying things. So I'm just trying to pump the brakes a little. I'm excited. I think everybody's excited, but I'm trying to relax a little bit.
Good strategy, buddy. Good strategy.
Good strat. Sean, what do you got?
I applaud that. My final thoughts are, Tom DeLonge back at Blink 182. That's pretty exciting. They're going to come through Sacramento. I think now that Mike Brown and I are coworkers, I think it's only fair that he lets me on the bench at some point. I just want to shadow my new coworker. I think that would be best. He spent a day shadowing me. I think I could spend a day shadowing him. That'd be fine. And
will he let you make play calls?
Probably not. And I don't need that. I just want to get in the huddle with him where he looks to me and he like, what you got? And I just go, nothing, just watching. And then get back to the bench, get around the huddle, look at a guy in the eye and make maybe a crazy look at him, like bring it. I don't know, something stupid.
I want to
like
see
that.
Sean with a whiteboard on a string around his neck, drawing plays on the whiteboard on his belly, like upside down. I want to see that.
If
Can you wear
anyone
hats
knows
on the
me,
bench?
sure you can. Why can't you?
Okay.
There's no rule. I don't. There probably is a rule. I don't know. Also, since Brenden came through with the 7, we found out that he really liked 7. He likes that style of movie. I came up with 3 just in case he wanted to stay. Well, one that goes in that genre of movie. Write this down. Here we go. You haven't seen Silence of the Lambs, I don't think, right?
No, and this is Dahmer, right? I've been watching all these Dahmer.
No, it's not Dahmer, buddy.
It's
but
not
you go ahead
Dahmer.
and no.
Is it not based on
just
Dahmer?
Go ahead. No. Ed Gein was one of them. Ed Gein was. I guess there's a Dahmer element as well, but Ed Gein I think was the one that inspired Silence of the Lambs, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you should give that a roll. But if you don't want to go there, I recommend one of my favorite movies is Heat.
Seen it.
Have you?
We did the Heat. Yeah.
I have. It's been a while, though. I could
we
use a
made him
rewatch.
watch it. I rewatched it because you made me rewatch it, and I bought the
fantastic.
extended version.
You
and
bought.
well, on I couldn't. It wasn't available anywhere. So I have like I
You
don't
didn't
know,
have it on VHS anymore?
I have like 300 and
guy.
something movies. I have like between
3
like
boats.
no, probably like 1,200 Blu-rays
Here we
slash
are.
DVDs upstairs, which we never even crack. But I also have a Vudu account, and we have way too many movies there too. So
And if you
yeah.
wanted to go comedy, I was going to say Life because I think that might be my favorite. I'm a little biased because I was around the set of that movie when it was filmed in the Sacramento area. So, Life with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence.
Interesting. And I'm gonna put Memento on there. Like
You guys have mentioned that one.
that you're gonna love that one. If you like the other, you like that.
I'm
We
telling you, I
should-
will check off Silence of the Lambs for next episode because you guys are not the first one to say that.
Okay.
It's brilliant. Like
Fantastic.
Silence of the Lambs is like it's absolutely brilliant. Okay.
Brendan, feel free to give us homework assignments. I know it doesn't have to be a one-way street here. James has a lot of culture. He can, especially this new culture, he can go into, myself as well. So bring it.
You guys seen The Incredibles?
I have.
I don't know that my recommendations are going to be it, guys.
I've seen all.
I
of
can't
those
even think of
movies,
any off the
all
top
the
of my
Marvels.
head. So we'll get
Yeah.
back to you.
I've got boys that are 15 and 19. Let's see. I've got 2 things. My final thoughts for today. Number 1, today is the 26th anniversary of the first date for me and my wife. We went
Did
to
you close?
see.
I mean, eventually I got it, but
I do have 2 kids. yeah, I did close because we're still 26 years in. Yeah. We went to see Bulletproof in Roseville, which was horrible. Adam
Bulletproof.
Sandler
oh
and
yeah, Damon Wayans.
Damon Williams. Yeah. So that was 26 years ago. That's our first official date day. We're 23 married. And then the other thing I want to bring up, I wrote about this yesterday, but they allowed us back in the locker room for the first time in 31 months. And it was kind of weird and awkward. And even De'Aaron Fox said to a few of us, like, oh, it's weird having you guys in here. But I'm excited about that. You just get better content and you get, better relationships with players. And to me, I think it's a thing it's been totally missing from the content from the last couple of years. It's really hard to write when everyone has seen every single one of your questions in a YouTube clip, again and again and again, and on social media and everything else. It's really hard to write a story that's original and creative when that's the case. And so I'm excited to get back in there and to actually have relationships, build relationships with players in a different way, have the accountability that comes with being in the locker room of, when you write something negative and blow someone up, they have every right to have a conversation with you about it. And I just feel like it's an ingredient that people don't realize it's been missing, but it's there. And so, yeah, that's a big one. So I'm really excited about that. And then I guess there's a third, and I'll let Sean weigh in on this. The cameraman getting run over by Adams in the Raiders game. Sean, as a dude who's down there on the field, running around all the time, doing stuff like that, just like. First of all, that guy took a ride to the hospital. He called the police.
Jesus.
There is talk of assault charges, and it's being investigated by the police. But what were your thoughts there?
First, I guess I had it wrong. Not a photographer. Looked like he was carrying, I don't know
Gear.
what the hell that was, but gear. Yeah, I guess that's one way. Maybe some stage setup. I don't know. Get the hell out of the way. One. Usually those tunnels are blocked, and it's not like Devontae Adams was running at him. He was, walking, and this guy is late. I don't know if he's late for his job or what, but he did jump right out in front of him. But you're Devontae Adams. You can't go pushing a dude like that. You can't lose your cool. So shame on Devontae Adams. I do credit the fact that he came out and apologized immediately, but dude, get the hell out of the way. What are you doing? It was comical in a way to see how far he went. I hope he's okay. But get out of the way. He shouldn't be there. And
Yeah, the one camera angle that I saw, like, changed the perspective for me.
Right.
Because it looked like Devontae Adams was kind of walking towards or going towards the tunnel. It looked like he was going a brisk walk. And the guy popped up out of nowhere. Like, if
Yeah.
you see the angle from behind him, the guy really did, like, come into his field of vision at the last second. And I think he didn't know who or what it was and just, like, instinctively pushed somebody away from him. And so I know it's a bad look, but at the same time, it is a Zapruder film, like, where we got to look at it from every angle. And, like, what did Keith Hernandez spit or not spit? Yeah.
Well, and to that point too, it's like Devontae Adams is at fault. I want to make sure
Yeah.
that's clear. It's like Draymond Green. You are at fault. The video shouldn't have leaked. I get it, but it's going to leak. This guy shouldn't have been in your way, and he got thrown about 1,000 miles away from you, however far. I mean, I get more. I critique that media member more because you're ruining it for everybody. Now, when something like that happens, typically the league or the team or whoever, they take all these grand steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. And now we're going to have to block off the people walking in front of that 2 minutes before the game and 2 minutes after it's just a nightmare. Just don't overreact. It's a one-off. He shouldn't have been pushed. Just keep it at that. So that's why I'm a little bit more harsh on the media member.
Yeah. I think we're going to see that with, that's one thing that bugs me about, there's a lot of things that bug me about the Draymond thing. What did not bug me was that the video leaked, because people are going to get paid. There's someone walking around with a cell phone taking pictures of something at all times. You almost can't do anything right now in society without getting caught on someone's cell phone video. So I think that's just the biggest BS excuse I've ever heard, that, again, for him to get out there and, like, it's fine. But you're talking to the media, and he starts using profanity to like describe it. The entire thing was unprofessional. Like, you got caught, and it's not the fact that you got caught that should be out there. It's the fact that you did something wrong that's the problem. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's
when do you think we see him back?
I think, like, again, the Bobby Portis example, like 8 games, and then he didn't initiate that fight. So I would say, I'm going to guess it's more like 10 games if I'm the league. But I'm not sure. Like, we'll see.
I mean, Draymond Green's not with the team. Jordan Poole, unless he did so today, still hasn't spoken to the media since.
Has he cleared concussion protocol, or was he actually not in concussion protocol?
He played.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, he
Played
finished
damn
out
well,
practice.
too.
He played, real well. He still hasn't spoken to the media. So, unless he did so as we record this today, they're going to play the Blazers here later tonight on this Tuesday. I don't know, man.
It was pretty funny to watch Steph give him an award for the highest free throw percentage, but just thought it was ironic timing on that.
I was kind of waiting for Steph to fake a punch or something like that, just to make light of it, because he low-key control real well, and I thought he might do something like that just to bring some humor and light to it, but no.
Yes, some lighten the mood a little bit. All right, well, we've run this podcast long.
Yeah, we did. My fault.
Thanks for tuning into the Kings Beat podcast. Again, if you're still watching, give us a thumbs up. If you're listening somewhere, give us a rating and review. Subscribe. Jump on board with the premium subscription to the Kings Beat, especially when gas prices are what they are, and know that we have to drive to these places. So jump on board with the Kings Beat.
Some farther than others.
Yeah, some farther. I think today it was $108 to fill up the van. Oh my goodness!
I thought you were talking about boat gas.
No.
Yeah, just hop in that boat and come down the stream or something.
You just come down some sort of stream. F you guys.
You don't have like an electric vehicle yet. You got to maybe sell one of those boats. Get yourself an electric vehicle.
I might need to get an electric vehicle. We'll see how the Kings Beat does this year. We'll see. No, I might need to do that eventually. But I got a kid in college. I've got another one about to start driving, which Nobody likes to pay $160 a month extra for car insurance for a 16-year-old driver. Yeah, it's life. Life comes at you fast. All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast.
Happy anniversary, James.
Thank you.
Happy anniversary.
And Mrs. Ham, happy anniversary. So for Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We'll see you later this week.